Good morning, everyone. So before we start, a few housekeeping notes, please. Please note that this session is being recorded and will be made available through EMA corporate website and YouTube channel. Throughout the session, you can use Slido to ask us questions or give your input. Also feedback if something is wrong with sound or the session itself. And please note that interaction with Slido is voluntary and you may opt to remain anonymous. If you choose to use Slido, you are therefore giving us consent to process your personal data as explained in the EMA data privacy statement. Thank you very much. So with regards to questions and answers, please do join us via QR code and Slido to provide your questions and comments in Slido only. Please send and upvote your questions, the questions that you want to hear answered, and ideally before raising a question, check whether that same question has been raised before and vote for it. That will increase the likelihood of that question being addressed. Throughout the session, we have colleagues in the back end who will be trying to address the questions in writing as much as possible. And at the end, I will verbally address the top voted questions that have remained unanswered. Please do bear with us. Sometimes we do have a high volume of questions. We have many hundreds of participants online and we're not such a big team. And we may require assistance of a specific colleague who might not be available today. Unfortunately, we have had some cases of last-minute sickness. Unanswered questions are very likely to be addressed in other webinars throughout the next couple of weeks. And those that still are not answered, we will fish out the most relevant ones to be addressing in the frequently asked question document. You may note that we will not be answering each and every question, nor publishing answers to each of the questions raised in Slido. If you still want to have answers to a specific topic, please contact us via service desk so that we can track the question, we can investigate, and we can assign it to the relevant colleague who has the knowledge and can help you. So that's how we propose to address the questions and answers today. Last, in terms of the materials, they have been published already at EMA Events webpage, and they will be available also in the SPOR portal for you to refer to these presentations. And after the session, we will publish the recordings at the EMA YouTube channel and EMA Events webpage as well. There is a Slido registration link at EMA Events page where you can register, and we will email you these materials if you're interested. Now, having said that, I'm very pleased to announce today's session on SPOR data governance. My name is Isabel Shishero, by the way. I'm the head of service for regulatory data management services responsible for the SPOR data and XEVMPD, and I will be hosting the webinar today. So I'm very pleased to announce that throughout the next 2 weeks, we will be having one webinar a day covering all the topics of SPOR. We will be explaining the aspects, the processes of how we work today, and I seriously hope you can join us for a few more webinars throughout the coming weeks. So today I'll be talking about SPOR data governance. And what does it mean? I will be mostly explaining how SPOR data is governed, how it is controlled. I will be providing a little bit of context to the other topics of the SPOR week, so further details will be provided in the other webinars for each of the domains of SPOR. And also, very importantly, I'll be explaining how Agile transformation has changed our data governance structure, what are the structures in place, and who has to say in how we manage and govern the SPOR data. So I will be talking about the SPOR data governance framework, which is mostly composed of 5 elements, and the elements are strategy, process, policies, organization, structures, roles and responsibilities, as well as enablement. And at the end, I will do a small wrap-up with takeaway and conclusions before we go to a live Q&A session. So, what exactly will I be talking today? So there's 3 concepts that are critical to grasp. When we talk about data management, we're actually talking about day-to-day processing of SPOR data. This is what we do in my team, and this is what you will be hearing in more detail throughout the remaining webinar. So a lot of details of how we do, what we do for OMS, for RMS, for SMS will be explained in other webinars. I will be talking briefly about IT delivery and how we deliver new and changed IT capabilities to manage the SPOR data, how we improve our IT tools. But most importantly today, the focus of today's webinar is how we control how SPOR data is managed and used in the regulatory processes. And this we call data governance. So it's not about doing the processing of data, but is how do we change the processes, how do we change the rules, how do we control that everything is actually working as it was supposed to. And to do so, we have 5 pillars that you see there: strategy, processes, policies, organizations, and enablement that I'll be talking throughout today. Then what is these 5 pillars and why do we have these 5 pillars? So first of all, we consider strategy because the strategy is what provides the focus and the high-level course of action towards goals of data. So we look at the strategy for the business, the strategy for investment, and that gives us a focus on what we should do in terms of data management activities. Then we look at processes, because processes is what explain how we fit the data management activities into business operations. What is our role of managing master data in the context of regulatory procedures? It also gives us a very consistent framework to manage and process the data and always have predictable results. So processes is one of the key aspects that we use to control how data is properly managed. We also consider policies and standards, which give us principles to structure how data is managed. We adhere to international policies and standards that provide benefits of aligning across partners. And next, we also consider organizations and roles. And these are very important to define who is consulted, what is the reporting line, and who makes what type of decisions around how data, SPOR data is managed and used. And last, we ensure that we have continuous improvement of these processes, and we also ensure that we engage with our customers and build a data-driven culture, and we call this enablement. So we chose these 5 pillars to make sure that holistically we have a set of tools that help us control how the SPOR data is managed and used. So starting with the first one. What is strategy and how does it influence how we control the data? So our main goal is to provide master data quality services on substances, products, organizations, and referentials that enhance the quality of medicinal products and throughout the network to support regulatory activities. So that's the goal. And how the strategy supports us to do that. So first and foremost, we look at the network strategies, high-level business strategies that provide long-term direction for the business. And you see there a 3 set of strategies that I will explain in the next slide. Then we also look at the portfolio. Where are we going to do the major investments, particularly in aligning these business use cases with the needs to develop new or improved IT capabilities? And last, we focus our operational planning, what we do yearly and day-to-day in terms of managing data, to make sure that we align with those business strategies, those business goals, as well as the investment that's made on IT capabilities. So if we start at the top, the big high-level strategies that guide us forward, there's in essence 3 key documents that are strategic to us. We have the EMA Regulatory Science Strategy for 2025, so we're talking regulatory science, and SPOR supports those key goals of that business strategy. Very concretely, for the European Medicines Network Strategy, this is more IT driven, let's say, SPOR is specifically mentioned in 5 of the 6 priorities of this specific strategy. The priorities are those listed there, and I can name probably 2, the availability and accessibility of medicines, where SPOR can play a critical role in collecting and structuring information on marketing status, and also in terms of supply chain challenges, which are quite trendy at the moment. The fact that we can link products with the supply chain also helps achieve goals in terms of supporting shortages of medicines. Last, we also have a third strategy, which is the network data standardization strategy. And of course, this document wouldn't be complete without a dedicated chapter on SPOR and IDMP implementation and standardization of medicinal product across the network, and quiçá even internationally. Now, when we look at the next level of drivers, the portfolio drivers that align the use of data with IT capability investment, we see actually 2 things. We see that there are activities in the portfolio that actually deliver capabilities for SPOR, and we also see activities, many other epics and activities that are planned that SPOR operational work supports. So if we look at the activities that deliver capabilities for SPOR, we have in the pipeline the SMS UI portal and the SMS USRS integration that could be delivered by the research and development value stream. We have, of course, and you've seen throughout many demos, the work that's happening on the product management services that supports DADI, that supports IRIS, and many epics in the product lifecycle management value stream. And we don't have at the moment specific activities for RMS and OMS, as major IT activities have actually been completed in 2017. So we do have a set of epics, we call it, that are being delivered to improve the way the SPOR is supported. On the bottom part, there's many other projects that SPOR is supporting. And the reality is, for example, RMS is preparing many new lists for different projects. You will see in our statistics that we have lots of new lists coming up every year. Example being many lists we're doing for real-world data. OMS, for example, is mapping, revising rules and registering organizations on a daily basis, but also making an effort with regards to manufacturers of medical devices. SMS is enriching data to support antimicrobial sales and use. And PMS, of course, is increasing the quality of the product data, synchronizations to enable many epics across different systems of EMA. So if you want to know more about the portfolio roadmap, if you want to know about where we're putting our investments, this portfolio roadmap is shared at EMA webpage. And in this presentation, you see the links there under the bullet points that you can consult and find this information yourself. Now last, we pick up all these strategies and we pick up the investment in IT capabilities and we devise our yearly plans. And you will see in the next webinars throughout the next couple of weeks, for each of the domains, something that looks like this. Each data service has its own objectives and one plan per domain, and we advertise our plan, at least in the webinars that we host twice a year. So the focus, of course, as I mentioned, the portfolio, starting maybe at the bottom, we support our own information management modernization activities. We also support other IT work and other epics. But at an operational level, we have 2 main drivers, which are to deliver efficient and effective regulatory data services and also to improve customer satisfaction and success. So we will keep focus on customer services, data management, and data quality. And in terms of improving customer satisfaction and success, you will see lots of activities around further documentation and easier use of the documentation for customers. And you will also see the advertisement of a few webinars that we plan to host, as well as the customer satisfaction survey on SPOR data services. So before we move on to the next, just to recap, We focus on strategy to make sure that we know what are the drivers of the business, what are the drivers and investments in IT capabilities, and to align our plan. And now we will move on to what processes we use to manage and control SPOR data. So similar to what you've seen before, there's actually 3 levels of processes. At a very high level, what we call operating model is a model that defines how data management fits into the regulatory business context. How do we fit our registration of data activities into the regulatory procedures? And in a nutshell, you will see that industry and NCAs pre-register or update SPOR data before they submit these applications and submissions, and that industry submits authorized product data centrally to EMA. I will further elaborate on that. Then we have, in the second layer, we have what we call the data management processes, and these are high level, the data management process that we carry out to you. And EMA provides data stewardship and customer services. So we manage data and we support our customers with the data management activities. And in the back end, we also provide services on data quality management and service management to make sure those processes are run smoothly. Last but not least, for each of these things, whether it's a change request or a service carried out by ourselves, we have what we call data operations, which are simply how do we create, read, update, or delete data. And these are also explained in the webinars throughout the next couple of weeks. So where do we fit in the regulatory business context? And for most of the processes that have already been integrated with SPOR, there is what we call a pre-registration. So applicants have to check whether they have the right substances, the right organizations, the right referentials before they submit the regulatory applications. And if they haven't, then they will request for that registration. Once they have the data that they need, then they can submit their regulatory applications to regulators. And when these are assessed, they will then update the approved product data in XEVMPD and Article 57 database. So that's what the overall flow of events is happening today. In the future, what we hope is that applicants and marketing authorization holders will submit their regulatory applications to regulators, and at the same time, it will be possible to reuse the data to update regulator systems and PMS so that data is reused across many different procedures and use cases. In terms of the data management processes, so what we do and specifically what we do for our customers, you can see there on the left-hand side that there are 2 main big processes that are driven by our customers. We do what we call data stewardship, and that could be of 2 sides. We can do change requests, which are requests upon user request triggered by our customers. But we also do a lot of service-led curation ourselves, so something proactive that we do even without the users requesting to us. And this could be proactive mappings or completion of data or validation of products, but it could also be cleansing and correction of identified errors that may or may not have been reported to us. On top of these activities that mostly relate to processing of data, we also support our customers by dealing with requests for information, questions, by dealing with requests for service, asking us to do something, or addressing issues and incidents that may have been reported to us. In the back end, first and very importantly, we have data quality management processes. So for every activity, for every change request, mapping, data service, even customer service ticket that you raise to us, we sample roughly 20% of that and we check to make sure that we are doing the processes that they're supposed to do, that we are giving the answers that you expect, and that the outcome and the data updates is actually correct. This we call quality control. Not only do we look at everything we touch, we also look at all of the data we have. We look across the data to see that it's still in line with the overall patterns, and this we call data profiling. And last, we also look at root causes and process improvements to make sure that we do minimum errors, that we improve our process, that we have more control in the way that we register and update the data. Moving on to further backend, we also do what we call service management. And service management is all about coordination with data governance and IT delivery, which is very important to the topic of today's webinar. So this is where we coordinate with the right governance bodies to change processes, to change capabilities, to consult all the stakeholders before those changes are implemented, and to communicate them once a decision has been reached. And of course, to keep the service running, we also look at invoicing, KPI reports, and very important to us, we run yearly customer satisfaction surveys so that we can focus our efforts in the feedback that you provide to us. So with processes, we hoped to achieve a reliable way to manage the data and to control the data. And of course, the next topic that we have on our framework is policies and standards. So policies and standards is what provides us a broad principle of operation and give us a structure of how data is managed on day to day. SPOR started first and foremost to implement ISO IDMP international standards. These are standards of how we define medicinal products. And by doing so, we also implement messaging standards, which are based on HL7, that we call FIRE. So by using these international standards, not only are we aligning in Europe, but we are also aligning globally to a common definition of how we exchange medicinal product information. In addition to these international standards, and a bit more closer to home, we also follow a set of EMA policies, and if you follow that link there, you will see the information on EMA website. We follow policies on security, on records management, on documents management, and so on. So there's a set of policies that also apply, generally speaking, to the data we manage in SPOR. And with regards to each of the individual domains of SPOR, we have a set of dedicated policies. So the way that we manage data in OMS is slightly different than the way that we manage data in RMS or SMS or XEVMPD. And you will see in the webinars throughout the next couple of weeks the dedicated policies and data quality rules that apply. So for OMS, we specifically talk about the OMS data quality rules. In RMS, you will see that for each list, there is a document called list information that defines the policies for that list, and there's extensive guidance on how to submit product information for XEVMPD. These rules and policies will be further elaborated on the SPOR webinar, so please, if you have questions, do bear with us. The answer is coming on those webinars. Last, in terms of policies and documents, and just to give you a little bit more reference, all of this information of the policies and documents that govern SPOR are available in multiple places. If you go to the EMA corporate website, you will see what's the vision and the introduction of the SPOR projects. You will see reference to the ISO standards. You will see reference to the SPOR data submission requirements and a lot more information there. If you click on these underlined, you will see the links to where you can find further information. On the EMA account portal, you'll see all the guidance, how to obtain access to SPOR systems, to EMA, including SPOR systems, and how to create an EMA account and request a SPOR user role. Specifically on the SPOR portal and EV restricted area, you will find domain-specific documentation, so guidance documents and reference documents on SPOR, and all of the user support documentation for XEVMPD, as well as technical documentation on the EV restricted area. There's also lots of training opportunities, like today's webinar, which will be published on EMA Info Channel. You will see lots of videos on previous webinars that contain tips and tricks, and also questions previously raised by users. And there's e-learning material and training opportunities provided for XCVMPD. Last but clearly not least, one of the services we provide is customer service, and this is done via EMA service desk. So for any help that you need that you cannot find in these documents, or even if you don't find the documents itself, you can contact us through EMA service desk, and we will help you as much as we can. So possibly moving on to the most interesting part of the presentation, organizations and roles. This is about who gets to be consulted, informed, and who has to have a say in the decisions of how we affect the processes, the strategy, the policies, and everything that governs SPOR data. So there's actually kind of 4 pillars of activities around SPOR data. We have to govern the day-to-day management of SPOR data as it's been agreed by the actors and the groups that get involved in these activities. So starting from the left-hand side, we have the day-to-day management of SPOR data, and the critical roles for this are the service owner and manager and EMA data stewards. If we moved to the top right, we have what we call SPOR data governance, which is all about how SPOR data is managed. And here we have a key role played by what we call the key user group and the network data board. If we go to the bottom right, we have data governance that covers how SPOR data is used and applied in business processes. And the key roles here are the process owners, the ones that manage how the process is defined, and also the network data board. And last but not least, if we talk about IT delivery, which is about delivering new and updated, improved IT capabilities to manage SPOR data, we have the value stream owner roles, we have all the agile governance bodies, and the network data board. Central to all these different areas of competency or responsibility, we have the SPOR business lead that coordinates it all. And you will also see a pattern that we have the network data board involved in different aspects of how we govern SPOR. So this is a group formed by all the NCAs, and this is where we typically discuss matters about data management and SPOR. I will explain in more detail how each of these boxes translates into reality. So for each of these areas, you will see that I have a slide that kind of brings what I call the structure. So what are the bodies and how do they organize themselves in a structural way? And I will also explain the process that happens across these different structures. So starting with how we do day-to-day management of SPOR. So what is our day-to-day operations and who's involved? At the top of the food pile, let's say, we have the service ownership, which are the people responsible or accountable for SPOR data and ensure the quality and availability of these services overall. So at EMA, the service owner is the head of division, Hilmar Hammond, and the head of core services, Christoph Pilichammer, and the day-to-day responsible for these services to make sure that they're rightly provided is myself. I'm the head of regulatory data management and responsible for all the SPOR domains. Day-to-day, we have a team that provides data stewardship, and this means that they ensure that processes, policies, and standards are in place and are being followed. For each of the domains, there's a business lead. You can see the names there. And there's a team of data stewards that supports the day-to-day processing of data. So this is how the services are provided on a daily basis. And for specific process, for specific cases, we have the data owners who actually decide how to create and modify the data and who has access to the data that they own. So for substances, we have the substance validation group. For referentials, depending on the list, we actually have different organizations. We have lists from EDQM, from MSSO, ISO, and so on. So depending on the process and the data, we may need to consult who are the real data owners and implement the rules as they have defined for us. So day to day, there is a hierarchical structure. Escalation points are at management level, EMA. At each domain, there is a responsible person and there is a business team responsible for the processing of the data. So how does this happen on a day-to-day basis? If the structure was unclear, this slide tries to provide an idea or a glimpse of the flow of events of how data is managed on a day-to-day basis. So EMA data stewards execute the day-to-day data processing activities, either change requests that you send to us or customer services or data quality management, and they have a level of authority to decide. Of course, they decide whether they approve or reject a change request on how to close a ticket. The business lead coordinates all these activities and they provide a domain-specific overall service management. They decide on what tasks to do first, the planning, how to prioritize, where to put more resources, and to coordinate that we're complying with SLAs and delivering a good service. In certain cases, the data stewards can, as I said, consult the data owners for specific decisions. Overall, I am the service manager and I am responsible for the quality and availability of the SPOR services. I am the first and most important escalation point for these operational issues. So if you have issues with non-compliance of SLAs, if you have issues with quality of the services provided, complaints about a particular service, I am the person that you need to escalate to. And above me, the service owner, which is the head of division, has overall accountability for SPOR data services, and he is meant to be the escalation point for strategic issues. So he deals with issues where there's investment needed, where there's modernization, where they need a lot more resources than those that are initially planned. If we move on to the next set of competencies, if we're talking about how SPOR data is managed and used, specifically used, this requires the involvement of a wide group of stakeholders. So if we look at the top, we have a data governance structure that controls the management and use of data and decides on major changes to our processes and our policies. And all these groups are meant to represent the views of different stakeholders. Therefore, they have a say on these major changes. So at the top, we have the heads of medicines agencies, the management board. The critical body to us is the network data board that comprises representatives of the NCAs. And we also have an internal mirror data board that provides the views of different business users of EMA. At the middle layer, we have what we call data leadership, which ensures a degree of agility in these changes. So if we are to do a small change, we're not going to be consulting the management board of a specific rule in OMS, for example. So the business leads have a degree of autonomy to decide specific small changes for their day-to-day processing of data and their specific domains. And at the bottom, we have user groups that ensure that stakeholders' views are considered. And this we call the key user group, which is a group of experts that know how SPOR is managed and used, that represent the views of NCAs as well as industry. We have a bit of a limbo situation here. We have XCVMPD that is being managed per the rules that were previously defined by the Article 57 implementation group. This group no longer exists, but we are still managing the data according to those same rules that were defined in the past. PMS will replace XCVMPD, and at the moment, because it's not yet into production, is being governed by the Agile governance structure and supported by the product owners and the subject matter experts that have been nominated to provide input on behalf of different stakeholders. When PMS will be in operation, it will be governed under the same governance structure, so we hope to extend at that point in time the key user group to provide input to that, and we will be reporting to the same data boards and management boards and HMA. So if we're talking about how data is managed and used, what is the flow of events? What happens? What's a typical example that these people get involved in? So we have here a sequence of events and an example at the bottom. Daily, as before, EMA data stewards execute their day-to-day management activities, and they can collect issues, questions via service desk or change requests. I have an example here of a rule that we actually discussed a couple of months back. So a question was how to capture these large volume receiver addresses in OMS. It was a small change. So this matter got escalated to the business lead, who understood the issue, the requirements, explored the options, so what we could do in the tool or not, prepared the material and consulted the key user group. The key user group has members of NCAs and industry. They looked at the problem, they identified that the problem was something specific to Germany. They reached out to their peers, subject matter experts that were knowledgeable in what was happening in Germany in this particular situation, provided an advice, and then the key user group provided an advice on the matter. In this specific case, the business lead could decide and implement the change because it did not have a significant impact to SPOR data management processes. And the outcome of that was that the data quality rules document was updated with these new rules for large volume receivers. It was published and it was implemented as soon as possible in all the change requests we had similar to that. If it had been the case of something that required more impact or more consultation, we would at that time consulted the network data board, who would advise and decide on any significant change. We have a topic currently being discussed at the network data board about dealing with multiple combined locations, and that's the process that we follow for more complex or significant changes to the rules. Now, if we're thinking about how data is used, that's a different side of the coin, but follows a very similar pattern. We collect feedback from the users by the key user group, so we can collect feedback via service desk. And a question we had a while back that was very frequent in our service desk was, how is OMS becoming mandatory for centralized procedure? What's the impact? What does it do to my regulatory submissions? So we collect these questions via service desk. They're again escalated to the business lead, who prepares all the material and consults the network data board. The network data board can advise the process owners on what are the best practices, and they typically will think of different aspects. They will think, are the stakeholders ready? Do they need more information? Is it clear? What are the detailed rules? What should happen? They provide a series of advice of things that should be considered to mitigate the impact of that change to the different business areas. But ultimately, very important, it is the process owner, it is the person or the group of people responsible for that regulatory process who decides how to implement it in its own business area. So both SPOR team as well as the network data board can only provide advice. We cannot enforce that a given process owner or a given regulatory process actually changes. In the case of OMS becoming mandatory for centralized procedure, Human Division at EMA considered the advice. I think they actually extended the timeline, they clarified the rules, and they prepared frequently asked questions and documentations and webinars to roll this out. Our role in this is that the business lead steers any of the needed changes and the data stewards to implement whatever is needed. They contribute to these documents and the frequently asked questions, and they advertise it via the key user group. But very importantly, the ultimate decision is with each individual business owner, not necessarily with the SPOR team. Throughout this process, stakeholders are informed by the process owners. The SPOR team can only contribute to the elaboration of information such as FAQs or dedicated webinars that could be hosted. Last, the pillar of IT delivery. And this you have plenty of information. This is all about new and changed IT capabilities to manage and govern SPOR data as well as any other investment. So at the top, we have a series of governance bodies who provide strategic direction and govern the major investments. There's a link there that you can click and browse all about the agile governance bodies and how NCAs and industry can be involved in governing how the IT investment is made. At a more concrete level, we have what we call the value streams who actually deliver this in practice and make sure that the delivery aligns the business value that is expected and provides the focus for the activities. We have 5 different value streams. You can see there the names of those value streams. You can also see the relevant and people responsible for carrying out this work. So we have a technology, life cycle information security value stream that delivers technical improvements. We have a managing the agency value stream that is all about supporting financially and human resources and training for the network. Research and development value stream, which is about early stages of product life cycle. Then we have product life cycle, that it's about all the regulatory procedures that are used to approve and manage the products, the medicinal products, and monitoring at the end, which is about pharmacovigilance, inspections, shortages, and monitoring the use of medicinal products. So at the bottom, we have product teams who actually deliver these goals. And specifically to SPOR, we have been allocated to 3 different value streams. We have PMS, and I'm sure you've seen plenty of demos of PMS under the product lifecycle management value stream. If we have work being carried out and when it starts on SMS, it will be under the research and development value stream. And OMS and RMS at the moment have nothing planned, but it is foreseen that if and when they do, they would be reporting to the managing the agency value stream. Across the bottom, I'm also the EPIC owner responsible to deliver the values of SPOR master data throughout those different domains. So similar concept as before. So how are these things delivered? Typically, the demand needs feedback from users are collected from different sources. So we have the key user group collecting feedback. We have EMA data stewards collecting feedback via the service desk or change requests. We have different process owners providing requirements on how to use SPOR data in their processes. And if we identify that we need to change something, the first point of escalation is always the business lead or product owner, who will then see what the requirements are and liaise with the different value streams to define the piece of work that needs to happen. Then the agile governance bodies kick in, and there's a lot of discussion on prioritization of which piece of work goes ahead and not, and what are the dependencies. And this prioritization, as you can see in the agile information, is done initially by the portfolio board, but also by the network portfolio advisory group, which is a group composed of member states. The network data board may provide advice on the priority. It is the board that is responsible for data topics, and they will advise whether it's urgent and whether it should be implemented in a given way. And ultimately, if and when these pieces of IT work get prioritized, it will be up to different product teams to deliver and implement the solution. So a lot of collection of input, a lot of prioritization, and when it's up for implementation, it is the product teams who will implement it. Stakeholders can be informed via the Agile ceremonies and events. These are advertised on EMA website. And you can see that there's quarterly demos of all the projects that EMA is undertaking. Anybody can participate those demos, and anybody can provide feedback via these quarterly system demos, which are open to the public. So moving to the last pillar, this is about supporting continuous improvement and also engagement with the stakeholders. And starting with continuous improvement, it's very critical to us to know how we're performing and whether it's a positive trend. So we have a set of key performance indicators that are defined, and we have indicators on volumetrics, what data is being managed, how's it growing, how frequently is it updated. We have KPIs on data management. What do we do? Is it requested by you, done by us? Is it customer service? Very importantly, we also monitor how we adhere to the established service level agreements, which are the timelines that we've agreed to do the tasks in. We look at service quality. Are we doing errors, major errors, minor errors, and how is the quality of our services evolving over time? And we also look heavily into data quality. Some of these things we do monthly, some of these things we do quarterly, but very importantly, we do share these information with you via the webinars 2 times a year. So you will see a set of statistics coming up in the webinars this week. We do provide aggregated yearly statistics together with the results of the customer satisfaction survey, and we are trying to improve reporting and business intelligence capabilities to enhance the transparency of what we do to the external clients. So we have a set of key performance indicators, and we share them as much as possible. And if you're interested in any specific aspect of how we're performing, please ask us via service desk. An example of statistics we have may be interesting to know. We have high volumes of substances, nearly 64,000 substances. We have 80,000 locations already, referentials, 212 lists, and so on. A bit surprisingly, everybody assumes that referentials, there's nothing happening. You can see that in terms of growth rate is actually one of the domains that has more growth. The fact being that we publish a lot of lists for different projects, and every time we publish a list, it's a big set of terms that go into the database. So we do have a significant growth there in referentials. Unsurprisingly, the data that changes the most is organization, so I don't think you will be surprised with that. And there's a whole set of additional statistics that will be shared throughout the webinars the next couple of weeks. In terms of engagement, we host these webinars. We're trying to host them at a minimum 2 times a year, so a big series like this 2 times a year, and when there's need, we will host some more. And very importantly, we run a yearly customer satisfaction survey. This is sent to registered SPOR users, so it's not, if you're not a SPOR user, you will not get the link to do it. It's run at the end of each year, and because we've run it already for the past 2 years, we always compare the results with previous years to see how far we're going, and hopefully this year again, we will have improved results. The results of these customer satisfaction survey are published in the SPOR portal. So if you go there, you will find the previous 2. And very importantly, we use the feedback from you to identify what we need to improve next. So last year, there was a lot of feedback on customer services and service desk, and that's where we prioritize the activities this year. Your opinion is really important to us. We will run it again in Q4. We will send it out on Monday, 30th of October, and it will run until 10th of November. So please, if you see an email popping in, it's because you're a registered user, and we would really appreciate your feedback, specifically in where you think you think we're doing well and where you think we can still improve next year. Last, we also have a series of training opportunities, the videos I've mentioned, the e-learning and the training. So this is what we do to provide engagement with our stakeholders. How can you stay connected with the work of SPOR and XCVMPD going forward? So same as this year, we're planning to do 2 series of webinars next year, one in the first half and one in the second. We don't have concrete dates yet, but they're likely to happen between March, April, and September, October. They will be announced via the EMA website and events page. and please tune in as we will publish them shortly. And last, we also have the customer satisfaction survey, which will run again next year. So, what is data governance? And a few recaps. So data governance is all about how do we govern, how do we make sure that we're managing the data according to the rules and according to everyone's expectations. It's about planning, oversight, and control. And I've mentioned we have chosen 5 pillars to do this for SPOR. When I talked about strategy, I believe I demonstrated that we have EU strategies, the network portfolio roadmap, and the SPOR operational planning aligned and in place. And that's what enables us to focus our actions around the data, to plan, to make sure that what we do is in line with those strategies. In terms of processes, we have an operating model that defines where we fit in the regulatory activities, and we also have data management processes that are fully defined and operational that we use on a daily basis. This is what ensures that data is consistently and adequately processed on a daily basis. We have policies and standards. Not only do we apply international standards of how we define medicinal products and how we exchange medicinal products, we have EMA defined policies, and we have a wealth of domain-specific policies for each of the domains of SPOR and data quality rules also available. In terms of organizations and roles, we have clear governance structures. So we have defined reporting and decision-making lines across different areas, not only how we manage data, but how it's used and how IT delivery is done to improve those capabilities. So we have a structure in place. And last, to ensure we have continuous improvement and that we're constantly engaging with stakeholders, we have metrics, monitoring and reporting in place, which we share with the stakeholders. And we are stepping up and continuing engagement activities via webinars and the customer satisfaction survey. So this is how we follow the 5 pillars and we make sure we keep the data well controlled. In terms of conclusions, I hope I have demonstrated that we have a structured approach to governing the data, that despite agile transformation and how IT enablement is planned and execution, that there's still a very robust structure in place. And overall, I think this presentation has mostly focused on how the data is managed and governed. And if you require more details on how we do it on a daily basis, they will be covered on subsequent webinars. Now, I think we have a little bit of a surprise for you. I'm sure you're eager to do questions, and we have ample time for that. But I wanted to do a quick game to make sure you paid attention. So let's see if I swap, not that, just a question. Yep, give me a second. So we have a quick quiz for you. You should see something coming up. And please reply. I should submit operational queries to EMA data stewards and SPOR business lead directly. Is this true or false? This is false. Oh, this is true. Yes, you should submit operational queries to EMA data stewards and business leads, maybe not directly, but via the service desk. I think that's the question there. So the next question there, I should submit any concerns, complaints about a particular service to the service owner, the head of information management division. Is this true or false? This is false, and the majority had it right. If you have any concerns and complaints about a particular service, you should submit them directly to me. I'm the head of regulatory data management services. The head of division is normally responsible or addresses issues a little bit more strategic. If he gets that letter, he will send it to me anyway. Next. I can engage with SPOR services via webinars and customer satisfaction survey, and I also provide my feedback to key user group. This is true. So you can follow everything that we're doing via the webinars. Please provide us your feedback via the customer satisfaction survey. And also, if you have relevant concerns, you can also contact your peers via the key user group representatives. I should ask the SPOR team business lead how SPOR is used in a given business process. So the majority is asked true, and that's what you typically do, but that's actually not what you should be doing. Although the SPOR team and business lead is aware of how SPOR is used in a given business process, this information should be given to you by the process owner. Only the people working on a given regulatory process can really explain the rules to you. So please contact the business process owner. I can be informed of agile project developments and provide feedback via the quarterly system demos, which are open to the public. So good to see the majority really had it right. So you can every quarter join in the system demos and provide your feedback. That's how we can improve for the following quarter and get your input. So thank you very much. There was an MS registered who got 5 out of 5 questions right. So congratulations. And now it's the opportunity for you to ask questions. So let me just filter out. Does a diagram representing the structure and organization between the different systems exist, showing links between SPOR, PLM, IRIS, XCV, and PD? This would be very useful to have this global view. So we do have some diagrams, and I don't know if you're talking about architecture diagrams of the systems. They're very technical. We're trying to prepare a webinar actually with the key user group of how the information across the different system is linked and how SPOR connects the dots. This is something that is taking a while, but it's something that please check the EMA events webpage. We hope to be able to provide further information on that soon. At the moment, we don't have a simplified view of these, only these technical representations. And if you're really interested, then it's easier if we ask for a question or if you consult us via the service desk and we can see what we have available and how we can target the reply to you. But at the moment, there's no easy diagram that we can really share. It's something we are preparing and we hope to share via webinar. Kepa, a familiar face. We miss you. As PMS becomes the Article 57 database in the future, how is the data governance disregarding the governance structure expected to change from XCV-MPD database current governance, especially around data ownership and data quality related processes? Could we have any more guidance now? So I mentioned this in the webinar. At the moment, we use the current guidance and rules. Those haven't changed. There's been minor updates to XCV-MPD guidance, but the same as for the SPOR, they don't merit a consultation, a wider consultation or involvement of the network data board. If they did, we would consult the data board nonetheless. We have subject matter experts that have been nominated from industry and from NCAs who are providing input to how PMS is being delivered. And once PMS is delivered, we hope to use the same governance structure as the rest of SPOR. So we will have to expand the key user group to collect that feedback from industry associations and NCAs, and we will be reporting to Network Data Board nonetheless. So that is the principle. Yep. How will EMA communicate downtimes of SPOR UAT environment to industry people or software vendors? So I know that we communicate downtimes of SPOR production in ServiceNow. So in ServiceNow and in our webinars of Service Desk, this is a topic that we will cover. It's the vehicle that we use. So if there's something happening and there's a downtime, that's where you'll find information. But I'm not sure we specifically publish issues on UAT. So I'll have to take note of that. And if you can kindly request us via Service Desk, then we can follow up and provide you that answer. Many links that are given in the user manual on the EMA homepage and in applications such as EVVet, as well as those sent by the Service Desk, often do not work. Is this subject to a quality control? It is when we do revisions of those manuals themselves, but the thing is, it's a challenge to keep it up to date. It's something we have discussed with the key user group, and sometimes we know that we need to update them, but it's very hard. There's always a document that seems to slip. So strictly speaking, it's not what we call quality control. We do quality control in our data as such. In the documents, we try to identify where these links need to be updated, and we need to plan for an update as soon as their capacity. But it's not typically something that we prioritize or that we can promise to do consistently. There's way too many documents to be updated. After full IDMP implementation, will EV codes for organization be still used, or OMS organization IDs? So when we implement PMS, if that's what you mean by full IDMP implementation, in PMS, all you will see is OMS organization IDs. You will see SMS organization, SMS IDs, you'll see RMS IDs. In OMS, though, you will still find the mapping of the OMS ID with the old EV codes, but we're not planning to use the EV codes. How is industry informed about data stewardship outcome when EMA proactively updates data? So we have different practices here. So when we proactively update the data, we don't normally notify industry or anyone, with the exception of RMS. So in RMS, there is a subscription notification possibility. You can subscribe to specific lists, and you can subscribe to the type of changes that you're interested. And if you have done that, you will receive an email telling you these lists have changed. Please have a look at the lists. We don't tell you necessarily what the changes are. For OMS and RMS and SMS, we don't have that functionality at the moment. It's something that we have in the pipeline, but I'm afraid we can't yet say when that will be in place. The vision has been that this data will change quite frequently, and for that reason, we do recommend all companies and NCAs to use the SPOR API as much as possible. And linking into that, we have to use the SPOR API and how to use it to determine what has changed and whether what has changed is of relevance to you. So the volume of changes is so high that we don't envisage to send you an email. We envisage that you use the API and then you kind of determine that programmatically using our SPOR API and your own IT capabilities. Data stewardship states that EMA changes data as its sees fit. But PMS data on national authorizations are essentially an agreement between MAH and an NCA, not EMA. As data can change spontaneously, do these unilateral changes not render PMS useless to anybody else except EMA, who owns the PMS data? So when I mentioned data stewardship, first of all, I mentioned that there's the concept of a data owner. And in fact, for products, the established data owner that we have is each individual marketing authorization holder. It is true that in EMA, we do have a practice to standardize the data. We don't change the meaning of the data, but we do standardize, make sure that the data is entered in the right fields, that it's consistent so that we can use it for pharmacovigilance, signal reporting, and a few other business processes. There's a lot of conversation happening with regards to how we're going to do that in the future for PMS. And for more information on that, we will communicate via the agile ceremonies and the demos and dedicated webinars on PMS. As it stands, marketing authorization holders will send us their version of approved data. That's the agreement, and data will be entered in management according to what's published on the EU implementation guide that's also available on the EMA corporate website. How to reach service delivery manager in case user is disagreeing with EMA data stewards. So I suppose you refer to me. So typically, if you disagree with a specific outcome of a change request or a ticket, you can report back. You can contact us via ServiceNow and explain your case primarily to the EMA data stewards. If you feel that you haven't been heard, you can contact me directly. I think I'm what you call the service delivery manager. I'm the service manager, let's say. My email is isabel.shisharu@ema.europa.eu, and it will be available in the presentation should you wish to escalate a topic, a concern specifically to me. On the topic of service lead data curation, sorry, I missed something. I'm not probably closing them. Which one do I need to do next? So I've done that, how to reach service delivery manager. So when PMS replaces XEVMPD, will the access management change? Currently managed by QPPV and user vigilance, but will it change to SPOR access only? I'm not sure I follow the questions or I have all the details ahead of me at the moment. So this is specific to PMS implementation, not necessarily how we govern SPOR. And I believe it will be covered on the webinars that are hosted via the Agile ceremonies, the demos, and the dedicated PMS webinar. So I do suggest you ask it there, or if you're really keen, ask us via service desk. I'm not sure I have all the details in front of me at the moment, or that I understand the question. On the topic of service-led data curation, could you say a few more words about it? I could say many words. Let's see. So service-led data curation, this is about activities that we do on our own. So it's not requested by the users. Typically, these could be mappings. So we typically map data across different databases. We could add NCA mapping or support NCAs with mapping of substances. We could add mappings of EV to OMS codes, of SAP to OMS codes, and so on. We could do what we call enrichments, which is we complete the data with additional information from other sources. And examples of this, for example, in SMS, is we do the INN enrichments, the USAN enrichments, so we see whenever there's a new INN and we update SMS. In OMS, an example could be geo coordinates that we enrich whenever we update records. Other examples of service-led curation could be corrections. If you report something to us, we will for sure correct it. By our data profiling and monitoring activities, if we spot that something is not correct, or if we spot a duplicate, it's a service-led correction. We correct it ourselves even without you asking us to. And I think those are, from the top of the head, a few examples that come up. More examples, of course, will be covered in the webinars for each of the domains, where they explain what are the data services that they provide themselves. If you can bear with us for a couple of minutes, I do think we have a little survey on the webinar itself. I would love to hear your feedback. Did it cover what you were expecting? How can we improve? So thank you very much for joining the data governance webinar. Please note, we will be hosting further webinars throughout this week and next week, and I hope to see you in those webinars myself. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.